into A to Z Sports Primetime. I'm your host, Buck Reising, if you're new to the show, and I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by our friends at Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford is where you go for quality American-made Ford vehicles and customer service that cannot be matched. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Gary Ashton and the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. GaryAshton.com is where you go for your dream address. Without the stress, the Ashton team will put you in a position to succeed with the intel edge that only they can provide. GaryAshton.com is where you go. So, the best chance at success is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. And the best chance of success, I think, is something that can be done in layers, for lack of a better term. So we'll talk about it together in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Let's start with your Two Rivers Ford take. Will the Titans have over or under 43 sacks in 2022? That's, of course, accounting for the regular season. We're going to talk about the importance of sacks, how important or maybe not important you may consider it to be. But your Two Rivers Ford take is where we will start. Will the Titans have over or under 43 sacks this coming season? That's the total that they had, right? You go from 19 to 43. It's a pretty substantial jump. And in kind of diagnosing pass rush, sacks are not the best measurement for an individual pass rusher, right? You're not going to look at Harold Landry and say, okay, he had, maybe Harold Landry's a bad example because I think a lot of people do judge production based off of sack totals, but I don't necessarily look at that way. And neither do the coaches, by the way. Sacks are a great judgment of an overall pass rush, of an overall ability to disrupt the quarterback. Pressures for the individual, and I'm sure that's a line that you guys have heard me repeat over and over and over again. Pressures are what you look at and say, okay, this is the judgment of a pass rusher, of a good or a bad pass rusher. And then the sack total is how you judge the pass rush as a whole. Quarterback hits and pressures. Kevin Jones on Facebook has that right. And I'm looking at this and saying, okay, that's probably the thing that's most easy to recreate, that's easiest to kind of sustain. It's not turnovers necessarily, right? You have to put yourself in a position to capitalize on turnovers, certainly. But turnovers is not something that you can outright game plan for. You can try and put your defense in a position to capitalize on turnovers. You can coach how to force turnovers, but that's not necessarily a given on a play-in, play-out basis. Looking at the sack totals, that was something that obviously the Titans suffered with in 2020, but they were great as far as their turnover differential was concerned. In fact, it was the only reason that their defense was any kind of sustainable under Shane Bowen in that first season is because they were turning the ball over. Well, they weren't turning the ball over on offense, and their turnover differential on defense was really, really helping to carry the day. In the meantime, we'll talk to Mike Vrabel about the last time we talked to Mike Vrabel about sacks.
How surprising you get 9 sacks and that not be good enough to win a game?
Because you guys, last year, you talked about all the sacks we didn't have, and you guys somehow think that sacks lead to victories. They're great. We'll talk about how many we had this year, but I like turnovers and interceptions and caused fumbles. So maybe we had too many sacks this year.
Like I said, I've covered every game that Mike Vrabel has ever coached, and it still makes me laugh every time. Mike is, he's got a future in media or stand-up comedy, whatever he wants to do in his post-coaching career, if such things exist. But right now, he's just up there. Trying to get after people. So over or under, it's an interesting kind of way to look at it. I think that they're probably you would be safer betting the under for them to have a better season that they did as far as a pass rush is concerned. I think that a lot of that depends simply on the quarterbacks that they play. Now, I think it's reasonable to expect that they would be better. I think the safer bet is under, but I bet they probably go over, honestly.